Hey, my name is Alice. I grew up in a modest immigrant family and recently crossed the $1 million net worth mark as a 32-year-old. I've invested in stocks, real estate, various side hustles and businesses over the years, and I'm here to tell you that $1 million is not really enough. Not really even close. Now, for a really long time, $1 million or being a millionaire was a magic number, right? A finish line, an amount of money that actually means something. But in 2026, $1 million isn't really rich anymore. In fact, I think it's barely even enough to retire on if we crunch down the numbers. So I'm going to break down exactly why $1 million just isn't enough anymore today and what you actually need to do about it. With things like inflation, people living longer, healthcare getting more expensive, and pensions dying off, things have completely changed the math. $1 million today in your bank account has the purchasing power of about $300,000 back in 1980. Now, if you plan to retire it at 65 and you want to live 30 years post-retirement till you're about 95, $1 million gives you roughly $33,000 a year before taxes. $30,000 a year is not really rich. In fact, that's barely even middle class. I want to show you exactly how to calculate your personal numbers and the actual strategies that we're going to use to get there. So let's get into it. So we got to talk about inflation, guys. Inflation is like this silent wealth killer that's been eroding portfolios and people's millionaire dreams. Inflation is typically between 2 to 3% a year. And for context, back in 1980, or about 45 years ago, $1 million had the purchasing power then of $3.8 million today, in today's money. And that's because of this concept called the time value of money, meaning that $1 today is worth more than $1 tomorrow. So if we flip that around and we look at what $1 million is worth today, again, like I mentioned earlier, it's only about $300K back in 1980. If your parents told you, just wait till your 401k hits $1 million and you'll be set. But I guess back then, for that same amount of money to turn into reality, that lifestyle now requires $3 to $4 million. $1 million sounds like a lot, but then you think about like how you have to divide it 30 years by retirement. Really, at $1 million, you're still only about 25% of the way to true, real financial independence. So inflation, yes, it's an important economic concept, but it's not just that, right? It actually does wither away at your retirement fund. So if inflation today averages between 2 to 3% over the next 20 years, which is a healthy inflation rate for the economy, then $1 million today will have the purchasing power of $550,000 in 20 years. Okay, we also have to talk about retirement and how to actually plan ahead for retirement, the retirement rule that a lot of people talk about but might not really fully understand. And this one expense can destroy more retirement plans than anything else. So in retirement, or in retirement context, there's this rule where we call the 4% rule. You might have heard of it before, which basically means that you can safely withdraw 4% of your savings each year when you're retired. So when you have $1 million, that's $40,000 a year, okay? And $40,000 a year divided by 12 is just a little over $3,000 a month after taxes, really. So can you live off of that? $3,000 a month? Depends where you live, maybe. I certainly couldn't live on $3,000 a month. So is that really the retirement plan you're thinking about, living on $3,000 a month? But here's what makes it worse. According to a study done by Fidelity, the average 65-year-old couple needs approximately $315,000 just for healthcare in retirement, just healthcare alone in the US. Now, healthcare is quite the topic to discuss in the context of America. So healthcare is free in Canada, but there's also like a cost to that as well. It's not exactly like a perfect system by any means. But going back to that 315K number, that's not long-term care. If you have $1 million saved, that means that a third of that could go to medical expenses alone. And this is not uncommon. As somebody who knows other people around my age who are primary caregivers for their parents or their grandparents, I know that Hospital trips, doctor visits, prescriptions, these things do add up, right? Health is wealth, and in planning for your future, you don't want to be dependent on a single nest egg. And in the States, specifically, Medicare doesn't cover everything, right? There are certain components that it doesn't necessarily cover, like dental, vision, hearing, long-term care. Some of these things you might need extended healthcare benefits to receive. So healthcare isn't just, a expense in retirement that you should think about when it happens. It's actually potentially one of your biggest expenses. Now, one thing that's really changed this retirement equation and this whole concept of retirement and why our generation has it harder than our parents is pensions. So in 1980, about 38% of private sector workers had a pension. For example, if your parents were school teachers, they worked for the government, they probably had some pretty good pensions to fall back on for retirement. But today, that number is now less than 15%.
Thousands of teachers are participating in a statewide campaign to demand pension reform.
I love what I do, but at the same time, we deserve to have a little dignity and respect in terms of collecting our pensions.
So back when your parents, your grandparents retired with $1 million in their 401k, they usually often had a pension that was paying them between $2,000 to $4,000 a month on top of the money they were able to withdraw out of retirement. And that pension was able to cover a lot of basic expenses. And so the $1 million that they had saved for retirement was kind of like gravy. If you retired today with $1 million and no pension, that $1 million has to cover everything, right? Plus our expectations have basically changed because our grandparents, when they retired, that meant that they would stay home and cook and garden. But today's retirees, they expect more than that, I think. Nowadays they want to not just stay home and garden and do nothing, but they also want to travel. They want to eat out. They want to try all the nice restaurants. They want to maintain that lifestyle that they had back when they were working adults and potentially even help out with their kids, their grandkids. None of these things are wrong, but all of it costs money. So when I talk to a lot of people, and you might resonate with this yourself, you probably want at least $6,000 to $8,000 a month in retirement just to be able to live off of comfortably. And going back and doing the math backwards, that would actually require about $1.8 to $2.4 million of a retirement nest egg just to be able to generate the income. My parents were immigrants to Vancouver, and even though we didn't grow up with much, they were always really adamant on being good with their money and putting that money into assets. And so now as an adult, once I started working, I knew that I wanted to have a lot of different streams of income coming through, right? Whether it's through real estate, and I personally own 2 properties myself, whether it's stocks, I built up my own stock portfolio over the years, whether it's crypto, and now also as a business owner that does YouTube and social media. I realized a long time ago that it's not going to work if you just rely on one path or do one thing. And it's certainly not going to work from relying on your 9-to-5 job, in my opinion. So back then, it was more common to have a big pension to rely on, but now, most employers don't really offer that unless you are a school teacher or a government worker or you work in some sort of traditional field that does offer a pension plan. Most people have 401ks in the US or RSPs in Canada. They're the same thing, but that move from pensions to 401ks transfers a lot of the risk from the employer to the employee, right? So your grandparents may have had guaranteed income through this pension. You, nowadays, with your 401k, are responsible for either hiring a financial advisor to help you manage your money or to do your own research and to understand things like different market classes, market risk. And you are basically responsible for prioritizing your own financial well-being and making your money last. So I've convinced you that $1 million is enough. How do we actually get to your number? Your number is not going to be the same as my number, which is not going to be the same as someone else's number. So let me show you how we would do some napkin math or really simple calculations to help you figure out what you actually need based on your expenses. So this is a really simple 4-step calculation that you can use. The first step is that we want to calculate your annual retirement expenses. So I encourage you to sit down and actually go through all of your monthly and annual expenses. Be really specific and honest with yourself. Food, groceries, eating out, rent, mortgage, healthcare, travel, phone, all of the, standard monthly expenses that you possibly have. Some expenses might actually go down in retirement. So for example, things like commuting might go down because you might not need to commute anymore, but maybe things like healthcare and travel might go up if you're planning on doing more of those in the future. So I'm going to call this annual retirement expense. And let's say that it's $80,000 a year, okay? $80,000 a year to just live and pay off your expenses and just, go about your day-to-day life and the things that you want to do in retirement. $80,000 a year is a little just under $7,000 a month. And, you kind of want to be a little bit realistic as well, like inflation, how far you are out. If you're 20 years old thinking about retirement, then this number might be higher just because of inflation. But if you're closer to retirement, maybe 5 or 10 years out, then that might be a realistic number, okay? Then the second thing we want to do is subtract guaranteed income. Okay, guaranteed income is things that you get from the government. For example, Social Security, pension, or something like rental income if you own rental properties and they're going to pay you out in cash flow. So whatever is basically needed in your savings to cover. So if you, again, budgeted for a $80,000 number above and Social Security provides you with $30,000, that means we have $50,000 of savings that we need to generate ourselves through our own financial discipline, saving and investing in our own portfolios. And then the third step is to apply a safe withdrawal limit. Okay, so like I mentioned earlier, a typical withdrawal rate is about 4%. So we can say that this is going to be about 3 to 4%. So if we did need $50,000 a year, and that's like the number that we need to generate for ourselves at 3.5%, let's say somewhere in between, that means that we need to be able to have an investment portfolio of $1.43 million. Now, let's say that we want to add a buffer onto this because we want to account for things like market downturns, healthcare. Not that I would wish this on anyone, but if you retired in a year where the market had a 20% downturn for whatever reason, we want to be able to account for that, right? So let's just call this buffer. And let's say that we, again, above had a $1.43 million savings or invested amount required, and we added a 20% buffer or a 30% buffer. This means that we would need approximately $1.7 to $1.85 million. So pretty eye-opening in that, what you think is a couple $1,000s a month when you actually go back with the math for how long you need it for considering everything related to retirement and all that stuff. The quick math, napkin math tells us that just by needing, less than $7,000 a month to live off of, we would need about $1.85 million of money invested in the markets, in a stock portfolio, in cash, whatever it is that's liquid that you can actually pull out of every single month just to fund your lifestyle on top of what you would be getting from your Social Security or your pension or any other rental income that you have. So your number is your number. This might sound really intimidating, but for me, when I calculate this number, it ends up being like $3 to $4 million. But knowing the real number kind of allows you to work backwards. So making money and building wealth is half the equation of financial success, right? Everyone has their own reasons for why they want to make money. For myself, I want to be able to protect the money that I create and also plan for my family, which is really, really important because I have a child. And so when you're family planning, some of the risks that you want to think about are market risk, right? If you are near retirement, then you might not want to have 100% of your money in stocks anymore because that's considered a higher risk approach. So as you near retirement, something like 50-50 or 60-40 stock to bonds tends to be more common for retirees. This is what we call a risk-adjusted portfolio. There's also sequence risk. So a market crash in your first retirement year can be really, really devastating. And so keeping at least couple years of expenses in cash as a buffer can help you mitigate from the risk. Risk management is a really, really critical part of building your portfolio. And if you're not sure, you don't feel comfortable on how to mitigate risk with your own portfolio, then I would recommend working with a financial advisor or a professional that is trained to be able to set up a risk-adjusted portfolio. Making money and building wealth is one thing, but if you can't save and you can't protect and you can't grow it, then you only have a quarter of the equation considered. And also like family considerations as well, right? This is something that I think about often now that my parents are getting older, now that I have a kid. What does this mean, right? What does your spouse expect from retirement? What happens if one of you guys pass first? Do you guys have a will, a power of attorney, all these sorts of things set up? They're not just emotional decisions or emotional questions. These are financial ones, and it's important to stay protected. So building wealth is like offense, but risk management is like defense, and you need a combination of both to be able to create a good future for yourself. Now, let me show you exactly how to reach your number without sacrificing your whole life. The highest impact strategies or things that you can actually do that will make a big impact on you today is to first maximize your tax advantaged accounts. So this is your 401k. If you have one with your employer, your solo 401k if you are self-employed, or your Roth IRA if you don't meet the income threshold for it. And if you do surpass that $168,000 individual filer limit and you can't contribute to a Roth IRA, then you might want to consider a mega backdoor Roth IRA if your employer plan allows. I always encourage people to learn and try self-directed investing because I think it can be very empowering and you can make a lot more money if you actually get good at it, right? For myself, how I was able to build up my net worth is that when I was still working in corporate, I really focused on investing and maxing out as much as I could into tax advantage accounts. And I knew that while that money was growing in my portfolios, I could eventually use it to purchase real estate, which is what I did recently when I bought my second home. Throughout my years in corporate, I kept focusing on just being really good at my job, being a good employee, and earning more. While on the side, I started to do more research online and figure out how to make online income, figure out how to do YouTube, social media, all of that stuff, right? So let me show you some napkin math. Let's say that you're 25 and you invest about $500 a month at 10% average returns. This is extremely conservative because 10% is just market returns. And so if you were to invest in a portfolio of ETFs or index funds, that would basically yield you 10%. And you don't really need that much financial knowledge or business knowledge to be able to do this, right? You will have, if you do this consistently for 40 years, about 3.2 million by 65. If you start at 35 and you invest $1,000 a month, you'll have about 2.3 million. So that's why getting in early and staying invested is actually more important, if not just as important, as the stocks you pick or your actual investment strategy. It's about getting in quickly so that your money can start to grow. You would think that for somebody who starts at 35 invests double the amount than the person at 25, you would think that the one at 35 would end up making more money. But that's not necessarily true. The math doesn't check out that way. So the key insight and takeaway here is that when it comes to investing, time is extremely valuable. It's okay to hold cash as well if you're strategic about where that cash is going. I personally hold more cash than I probably need to, but I have my own reasons for doing things. But as financial advice, it's always good to start as early as possible.